This playoff race ain't cooling off anytime soon.
So currently, if the season were to end, it's the Bills with that coveted bye and home field advantage.
Ooh, and just like that, we are now down to the final 5 weeks of the 2022 NFL season. Let's dive into our Week 14 edition of the 2022 NFL Power Rankings. Number 32, Houston Texans. Last time's ranking, 32. At this point, we are out of words to describe just how awful the 2022 Houston Texans are. Not even CJ Stroud or Bryce Young can save this team. With 3 playoff-bound teams next on their schedule, the Texans should have the first overall pick wrapped up very soon. Number 31, Chicago Bears. Last time's ranking, 31. Justin Fields is looking more and more like a franchise quarterback, so hey, that's pretty good news. The bad news? Well, the offensive line is atrocious. The Bears don't have any game-wrecking receivers, and their defense, the longtime backbone of this team, is messier than downtown Chicago after the St. Patrick's Day parade. Number 30, Los Angeles Rams. Last time's ranking, 30. The banged-up Rams had a more inspired effort in Week 13 against the Seattle Seahawks, but John Wolford and company fell just short of playing the spoiler role. Jalen Ramsey gave up the game-winning touchdown in coverage to DK Metcalf with 36 seconds left, adding another chapter of misery to the worst Super Bowl defense we have ever seen. Number 29, Denver Broncos. Last time's ranking, 27. This is seriously pathetic. How do you give up 10 points on the road to the Baltimore Ravens and still lose? It is beyond comical at this point. On the bright side, Colorado sports fans can celebrate the news of Deion Sanders leaving Jackson State for the Colorado Buffaloes. Bear with us, Broncos fans. We're doing our best to try and find some positives here. Number 28, New Orleans Saints. Last time's ranking, 29. The Saints were so close, and they probably deserved better. But in the end, they just could not hold on against Tom Brady and the Bucs. And now, instead of being just half a game back of Tampa for top spot in the NFC South, they find themselves well out of the playoff picture. At this point, why not give Jameis Winston his starting job back? Number 27, Indianapolis Colts. Last time's ranking, 28. It's crazy to think that the Colts were only trailing 21-19 late in the third quarter, before the wheels fell off in the fourth quarter, with Dell scoring 33 points to run away with a 54-19 win. If that wasn't rock bottom for this year's Colts, what is? Indy is playing for nothing but pride at this point, and maybe perhaps Jeff Saturday's coaching future. Number 26, Carolina Panthers. Last time's ranking, 26. The 4-8 Panthers are on a bye this week, but that didn't keep them from making headlines. At his request, Baker Mayfield was released. That means it is now Sam Darnold and PJ Walker the rest of the way. The Panthers have played opponents much harder under interim head coach Steve Wilkes. Now they travel to the Pacific Northwest with a chance to play spoiler against the Seahawks. Number 25, Arizona Cardinals. Last time's ranking, 25. The disappointed Cardinals were also on a bye, which is good, because this sloppy football team better bring their A game against Bill Belichick's New England Patriots on Monday Night Football next week. Number 24, Jacksonville Jaguars. Last time's ranking, 20. In the battle of football's 2 worst teams from 2021, it was the Jaguars on the losing end against the Detroit Lions. Jacksonville's defense picked a bad time to go MIA, as they allowed 437 yards in a 40-14 blowout loss. Yeah, the Jaguars might want to address that defense this offseason. Number 23, Atlanta Falcons. Last time's ranking, 19. The Falcons were in it until the end, but they were outlasted at home by the Steelers, blowing yet another prime opportunity to assert themselves in the NFC South race. Imagine what Arthur Smith could do with this team if he had an above-average quarterback and a half-decent defense. Number 22, Pittsburgh Steelers. Last time's ranking, 23. It looks as though this year's Steelers don't want to suffer the franchise's first losing season since 2003 after all. They have now won 3 of their last 4 games, the latest being a tight 19-16 road win in Atlanta. And just look at Pittsburgh's schedule the rest of the way. There is a realistic path to a winning season here, especially if Lamar Jackson misses one or both of their matchups with the Ravens. Number 21, Green Bay Packers. Last time's ranking, 24. The Packers' victory over their arch rivals on Sunday moved them into sole possession of first place on the all-time wins board. Sunday's win at Soldier Field was the 787th W in Packers history, with Chicago right behind them at 786. Hey, it's something for the Cheeseheads to celebrate in what has otherwise been a letdown of a year. Number 20, Detroit Lions. Lions. Last time's ranking, 22. Now, Dan Campbell's Lions have now won 4 of their last 5 games. And don't forget, they were this close to upsetting the Buffalo Bills on Thanksgiving. At 5-7 with 5 games to go, the playoffs are still a pipe dream. But we're finally seeing some progress from this resilient team. They'll be a bona fide playoff contender in 2023. Trust me. Number 19, Cleveland Browns. Last time's ranking, 21. Deshaun Watson's first game in almost 2 years was disappointing. Good thing the putrid Houston offense handed the visiting Browns a victory on a silver platter. At 5-7, Cleveland's playoff hopes aren't completely finished, but they'll likely have to win out to have a chance. Number 18, New England Patriots. Last time's ranking, 16. By this time of the year, we're used to seeing Bill Belichick and the Patriots hit their peak. But that is now 2 straight losses against playoff-bound teams, due largely to awful performances from this usually stingy defense. New England lost 5 games or fewer every year from 2010 to 2019. But this is now their 3rd straight season with at least 6 losses. It is put up or shut up time in Foxborough with 5 games to go. Number 17, Los Angeles Chargers. Last time's ranking, 15. We know the Chargers have had an unfair amount of injuries this year, but there is still way too much star power for this team to be 500 heading into Week 14. Brandon Staley was hired for his defensive mind, and yet the Chargers were 29th in scoring D last year, and they're hardly any better this year. If the Bolts miss the playoffs, you gotta think that'll be the end of Staley in LA. Number 16, Las Vegas Raiders. Last time's ranking, 18. It's nice for Raiders fans to see this team finally living up to its potential. A win over the Bolts has the Raiders sitting at 5-7 and not completely out of the playoff race after all. But man, imagine if they didn't let all those should-be wins slip away earlier in the season. Number 15, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last time's ranking, 17. It wasn't easy, and it definitely wasn't pretty, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are back to 500 and have taken a stranglehold of the NFC South. For 3.5 quarters, Tom Brady looked 45 years old. But those final 2 Buccaneers drives were patented Tommy, as he led his team on consecutive touchdown drives to erase a 13-point fourth-quarter deficit and win the game 17-16. Can they keep it rolling against the red-hot 49ers next week? Number 14, New York Jets. Last time's ranking, 13. Tough loss for the Jets in Minnesota, but at least Mike White once again moved the ball with purpose, finishing with 369 yards on the day. New York's stingy defense didn't have its best effort in Minnesota though, and White's 2 interceptions proved costly in a 1-score loss. The Jets are still clinging to the AFC's final wildcard spot, but things get tougher with the Bills next on the schedule. At Orchard Park, no less. Number 13, New York Giants. Last time's ranking, 12. Honestly, the Giants should be pretty happy with that tie against the Washington Commanders. The visitors put up nearly 100 more yards of offense, and Saquon Barkley had an off day. So, I mean, yeah, the Giants could easily be 7-5 instead of 7-4-1. Number 12, Seattle Seahawks. Last time's ranking, 14. It was closer than it should have been, but the Seahawks escaped with a win against a Rams team that was missing Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, and Cooper Kupp. 5 games to go, including showdowns with the San Francisco 49ers, Kansas City Chiefs, and New York Jets. Giddy up, Seahawks fans. This playoff race is gonna be fun. Number 11, Tennessee Titans. Last time's ranking, 9. The Titans were no match for the Philadelphia Eagles as A.J. Brown got the last laugh against his old team. We could jot down several concerns about the Titans here, including the fact that they've been awful against teams with winning records, but hey, let's cut them some slack. They're running away with the AFC South and will host a playoff game in January. Number 10, Washington Commanders. Last time's ranking, 11. So, when does Taylor Heineke get that contract extension? The Commanders are now 5-1-1 in games he's started this year, and a playoff spot is very much within reach thanks to him. Washington was the better team, and they deserve better than a tie in the Meadowlands. The good news is, they now get a bye before hosting their critical rematch against the G-Men. Number 9, Baltimore Ravens. Last time's ranking, 10. Lamar Jackson left Sunday's game against Denver with a knee injury, and backup Tyler Huntley came through with some last-second heroics to help the Ravens move to 8-4 on the year. The Ravens still hold the head-to-head tiebreaker against the Cincinnati Bengals for top spot in the AFC North, but if Jackson misses considerable time, holding on to the division lead will be easier said than done. Number 8, Miami Dolphins. Last time's ranking, 3. The teacher got the better of his pupil as Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers defense prevailed against Mike McDaniel and the prolific Miami offense. Tua Tagovailoa didn't have his best day, and the defense had no answers for Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy, who had to replace an injured Jimmy Garoppolo. Time to regroup, as Miami makes the cross-country trip to LA to take on the also playoff hopeful Chargers on Sunday night. Number 7, Minnesota Vikings. Last time's ranking, 6. The Vikings just keep finding ways to win tight one-score games. On one hand, you can say it has them ready for those pressure-filled games in January. On the other hand, you can argue that they're due for some losses if they keep allowing these games to come down to the wire. But why focus on the negative right now? Minnie is about to lock down its first division title in 5 years. Number 6, San Francisco 49ers. Last time's ranking, 7. That is now 5 straight wins for the 49ers, who defeated Miami 33-17 despite losing Jimmy Garoppolo with a season-ending foot fracture. With the league's best defense and all that offensive weaponry, it is unfair to write them off even with a third-string QB. Number 5, Kansas City Chiefs. Last time's ranking, 1. Another heartbreaking loss for the Chiefs against Joe Burrow's Cincinnati Bengals. Like the 2 meetings last season, KC had the game in the bag before committing some uncharacteristic late-game mental mistakes that cost them big. KC's struggles against the top-flight offenses are concerning. Number 4, Cincinnati Bengals. Last time's ranking, 8. Joe Burrow is the first QB to win 3 straight games against Patrick Mahomes, which is quite the feat in and of itself. The Bengals' man coverage once again slowed down the KC aerial attack, and Joe Burrow picked apart the Kansas City defense all day long. You can make a case now that the Bengals, and not the Chiefs, are the Bills' biggest threat in the AFC. Number 3, Dallas Cowboys. Last time's ranking, 5. The Cowboys crushed the Colts 54-19 to clinch another winning season. They have put up 40-plus points in 3 of their last 5 games, which to us is a sign of a really good football team. Who would want to face this defense in January? Number 2, Buffalo Bills. Last time's ranking, 4. Josh Allen once again picked the Patriots defense apart, picking up his 3rd straight win at Gillette Stadium. With Miami and Kansas City both losing, the Bills now sit atop the AFC. They control their own destiny for the conference's lone first-round bye, and who's to bet against them if they keep clicking on all cylinders? Number 1, Philadelphia Eagles. Last time's ranking, 2. A.J. Brown had a nice revenge game against his old team, putting up 8 catches for 119 yards and 2 touchdowns. Up next, Philly begins a 3-game road trip against the arch-rival Giants. This should be a dandy of a game, all right. But what changes would you make to our Week 14 edition of the NFL Power Rankings? Join us in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.